Welcome to the second public meeting of the Citizens Budget and Finance Advisory Committee. We're very happy to be here. Thank you very much for people who came out this evening. And we will have viewers at home, I'm sure, as well. I'll just take a minute and set the stage for this evening's meeting. We're going to have a formal prepared deck presentation, and afterward we will have available time for public comment. This committee has been spending a lot of time understanding the township operations and budget details, and at this point we're still gathering data, but we have come to some preliminary conclusions and interim recommendations that we will discuss this evening. Elizabeth, can you go to the next slide, honey? Okay, so here's just our agenda for tonight. We'll introduce ourselves, our approach, what we have done so far this year, an overview of the township finances, a review of the Citizens Budget Survey, a review of the 6 interim recommendations that were sent to the Board of Commissioners, and then public comment for anyone who would like to make some comments. And at that point, it's really your meeting. We look forward to hearing your ideas, your comments, your suggestions. Okay. I'm Sarah Armstrong. I'm a CPA, and I'm the CFO of a local software company. I have governmental accounting experience. I was an auditor for Deloitte & Touche, and I used to audit Montgomery County. We're going to give our brief credentials. Go ahead, Craig. We'll start with you.
I'm Craig Whelan. I've lived in the township for 20 years with my family, Ann, and our 2 children, Lucy and Ryan, who are in the Radnor Public Schools. I'm currently employed at Villanova University. I have a role as a professor there, a specialization in public administration and local government. I'm also currently the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs in that position at the university, and I look forward to hearing all your comments and your insights that we might have. We need a lot of good ideas, and looking forward to hearing yours. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Boeninger. I'm a manager in KPMG's Global Location and Expansion Services practice. I advise companies on corporate relocation, expansion, and consolidation strategies. I've been a resident of Radnor Township for approximately 3 years. Prior to joining KPMG, I served in the Governor's Budget Office and the Governor's Action Team, so I look forward to bringing some of my budgetary expertise to the committee here, and also look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Linden. I've been in the township for 16 years, along with my family, 3 daughters who are in Radnor Township schools, and my wife. Professionally, I'm with a software company, but over the course of my career through software companies and also with consulting, I've been involved in a lot of projects for a lot of different public sector organizations. So over the time, I've built up a good understanding of public sector organizations and how they work. I've had many questions about the township and looked at various information and thought the committee was a good way to get some answers to some of the questions I had and to help out the township at the same time.
Hello, my name is Nick Kemp. I'm with Northwestern Mutual's Wealth Management Company. I'm a certified financial planner. I've lived in the township for about 5 years with my wife Dawn and 3 children. 2 of my 3 are in the Radnor public school system. And I'm just delighted to be here, a part of this energetic, intelligent, hardworking committee. I think we're all looking forward to hearing from all of you this evening. The more ideas, the better. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rob Murdoka. I am married, have 3 children, have been in the area for just about a decade. Prior to that, I was in Boston at Harvard Business School, and before that at Merrill Lynch in their municipal finance department, and earlier than that at Price Waterhouse. And somewhere in that phase, I was at a startup company in Rosemont here in the area as well.
Good evening, Philip Wilson, Radnor resident for 11 years. I have a wife and 2 children. Daughter just graduating this year. My son already finished school. I have 30 years in the utility and energy industries. Have run a couple startup organizations and presently a partner in an energy consulting group. And this has been quite a wealth of experience and understanding to my part in this process. Thank you. Look forward to your comments.
Good evening. My name is Joe Ellis.
I currently reside in the township and retired as a school business administrator here in Radnor in 1999, having worked in the township for 15 years for the school district. So I have 25 years of governmental accounting experience, budgeting, et cetera, and also approximately 25 years in corporate accounting, finance, and auditing. As indicated by others, I look forward to hearing from the public with your suggestions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Watson. I have a wife and 2 kids. I have been living in Radnor for approximately about 10 years. And I now manage a real estate portfolio. And my previous employment was doing finance management for a nuclear power plant company. And we managed a budget of over $420 million. And right now I'm just really enjoying this time on this board, learning about the township and how to better help improve what we have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, everyone. I think, though, it's important to remember that we're just your neighbors, we're volunteers, and we're all Radnor residents looking forward and invested in the long-term success of our community. Next slide. A little bit of background. The Budget Committee was first appointed in late December of 2009, and our formal resolution was in February 22nd of 2010. There are copies of the resolution available at the back of the room this evening. There's also a copy available on our webpage on the Radnor website for anyone who's interested in those details. And that we were assembled to assist the commissioners address the budget and financial issues solely for Radnor Township. We're strictly advisory, and we've been charged with developing a report of observations, analysis, and strategic recommendations, which we plan to deliver mid-October. All final decisions will, however, be made by the Board of Commissioners. Next slide. So our approach, there was no blueprint. We're the first group here in Radnor Township to do this. We were starting from scratch, so it took us a few meetings to just get our hands around all of the data, the information, the sources of information, the operations of the township. And then we from there developed what we wanted our approach to be for this project. And we're starting with what Radnor residents really, truly want from local government. Wants versus needs, core services versus user fee-based services. And we also wanted to make sure that we increase citizen participation within the budgeting process, and we believe that participation begins with education, and we are trying our very best to disseminate as much information about the current financial situation here in the township as possible. We did already have our citizens budget survey. We'll be going over some of those results tonight. We have met with all but 2 of the department heads to understand the programmatic needs of each department. We've taken a lot of information they have provided to us and have begun to digest all of that. And we're really here to acknowledge that there are tough decisions that must be made. There is no silver bullet. There's no magic pot of money we haven't uncovered. We're working very hard to come up with reasonable recommendations for the board to consider. And this financial situation is not unique to Radnor Township. I'm sure that you see in the paper and in the news every day other municipalities, counties, and states that are facing similar financial challenges. So we're pleased to be a part of a group that hopefully will come up with some solutions. And we're soliciting ideas. We would love to hear from more residents of Radnor Township with ideas, suggestions. And there's no bad ideas, so we'd love to hear them. Let's think out of the box. Next slide. So what have we been doing so far this year? We've been holding semi-monthly working sessions where we get together, we review and discuss township budget issues. We take a look at the budget and we analyze different approaches to cutting, slicing the information, and coming up with analysis for that. We've been looking at and analyzing township documents. There's a lot of documents here at Radnor Township. In addition to the budget, we've been looking at those. And as I said, we've met with all of the department heads except 2 so far, just from some scheduling conflicts, but we'll be meeting with those in the next week, the other 2 department heads, to better understand their current departmental situations. We also met with bond counsel. As you'll see later, we have a significant amount of debt here in the township, and so we had an evening where bond counsel came and sat with us, walked us through the different bond issuances that we have, and we discussed all of that at length. We've met with the township manager to discuss his vision for the township, and then on May 20th, we issued interim recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about township finances. This is the first of 3 slides. At the April meeting, our first public meeting, we went into greater depth on the township finances. You can actually find that entire presentation on our website, our webpage on the Radnor website. So we have consolidated for this evening some of that financial information, but more is available. So this is the first of 3 slides. This is the consolidated township budget. This is all 8 funds. The township has 8 separate funds. They're listed at the bottom, starting with the general fund, sewer, liquid, capital, special assessment, park improvement and open space, willows, and debt service. Those are the 8 separate funds. They're kept separate, but for a very high-level analysis, we combine them into this all funds presentation. So you can see why we're really here this evening, why this group was formed, and that is because we have a serious situation on our hands. When we look at the budget, these are all the budgeted numbers, not actuals or currents. 2010, 2011, 2012. Each year, we're losing money. Revenues in 2010, 36 million, expenses 40. So projected loss, even though we raised taxes 11% this year, we're projecting to lose across all 8 funds $3.8 million in 2010. 2.3 million of loss in 2011, 2.1 million of a loss in 2012. What that means is that we're going to have to take money out of our fund balance. So we have essentially a savings account, an account that we've built up over the past, and we will be drawing that account down to pay our operating expenses. So you can see here expenses are exceeding revenue every year, every projected year. Our rainy day fund will be reduced by $8.3 million by the end of 2012. So if you look at the presentation, we're starting with 10.9 million, and we're projecting to end with 2.6. And it's actually worse than that in the general fund. This is the consolidated, as I said, of all 8 funds. We will be out of money in the general fund by the end of 2012. Okay, next slide. Now, the previous slide was all 8 funds. The next 2 slides, no, I'm sorry, this slide is just the general fund. The general fund is the largest of all 8 funds. This is where the majority of the township operations are accounted for. And as I said, a negative fund balance is projected by late 2012. On the left-hand side of the presentation are the revenues broken into their major components. Clearly, the largest source of revenue for the township is real estate taxes at almost 10.4 million. And then the next largest source of revenue is what's called Act 511. Act 511 is real estate transfer tax, mercantile tax, business privilege, local services tax, amusement, those types of taxes. So combined, that makes up 76% of total revenues for the township. Real estate taxes have held steady and will grow over the prior years because we did have a tax increase this year. So we had an 11% tax increase for property holders. That's reflected in the 10.3 million that's to be collected and has been collected, much of it. And then the realty transfer taxes and other 511 taxes, permits, and license revenue has decreased. So as those other sources of revenue decrease, that creates an even further shortfall. The real estate transfer tax, I'll just expand on that a little bit. When a piece of property changes hands in Radnor Township, there's a 2.5% tax. 1% of that goes to the state of Pennsylvania, 1% goes to Radnor Township, and 0.5% goes to the school district here in Radnor. On the right-hand side pie chart is the expenses. So you can see here in the general fund that the budgeted expenditures of 26 million are greater than the budgeted revenues of 24.7 million. So right away we have in the general fund this year a $1.4 million shortfall. There's many ways to cut this data. You can cut them by department, by account type, et cetera. Here we summarized it into the 6 major program areas, and those are the first 6 of the 7 bullets listed, starting with general government, going down to parks and recreation. And what's important to understand about the expense side of this equation is that some township expenses can be reduced through budgetary reductions, but a significant portion of these expenses are contractual and can only be reduced through contract negotiations and realigned. Okay. The next slide is the Radnor Township debt picture. This is the current picture for Radnor Township debt. Total principal due, $56.4 million. Total interest due is $33.5 million. So total debt payments of $90 million and change that are due through December 31st of 2037. So we have 27 years to make these current debt service obligation payments. And just to give you a sense of the magnitude of this, we've listed here the annual principal and interest payments that are due over the next 3 years. So in 2010, this year, we have to service $4.5 million in debt payments. These are general obligation bonds for the purpose of funding capital projects, purchasing capital assets such as land, building, machinery, and equipment, et cetera. And the township owns or has permanently preserved or condemned more than 550 acres of land currently. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Philip Wilson, who's going to talk about the budget survey.
Thanks, Sarah. First, I want to make a comment. As in our first public meeting, it was brought out, and quite correctly, the survey that we put together and initiated and put out for everybody's access to fill out and to participate in is not a scientific survey. It wasn't developed by experts. It was developed by us with the intention of soliciting everybody's input. It was one of the comments that did reoccur. We haven't had really a chance to delve into the results because it was just closed June 1st, and we were actually putting in some of the handwritten comments just last week. So as a group, we haven't even begun to analyze the results. But I do want to make it clear that we understand that it's not a scientific survey. It's really an opinion survey. But we will find, I think it's going to be useful for our committee, for the township to have an expression of their thoughts to come through this process. So to that point, as you can see, there was 734 surveys completed. We didn't give out any money or any candy to have it filled out. Of those people that completed the survey, 336 of them actually took the time and effort beyond just the survey to fill out their opinions and their thoughts and express those in the survey, all anonymous, mostly anonymous. Some people wrote in their names. Of the survey respondents, 68% of them have lived in the township over 11 years. 98% of the respondents are Radnor residents, with 15% of them business owners. 78% of the respondents felt that the future surpluses, and this is some of the very first stuff that we gleaned from the answers, should be used to restore the fund balance. As Sarah pointed out, we're digging into that each and every year. Also, it was clear that the respondents overall felt they preferred reducing taxes and enhancing certain services. Can you flip? That's pretty easy. Again, we didn't have a chance to look at the results in any fashion, but there were some clear ideas here. Some of the comments contained, really valuable insights as suggestions and ideas, which we're going to take a look at. In what we're also doing at the same time is collecting and gathering a lot of data and doing our interviews with the folks in the township, and also receiving additional emails from us, to get what thoughts you have. Within the results also, many of the respondents felt there's plenty of areas to reduce expenses and gain efficiencies. That seemed to be a very clear consensus of those responding. We also found, just in the answers, people have differentiated between essential and non-essential services just by in the numbers. We also found that people have a strong preference for raising existing user fees rather than increasing taxes. And we also found many people commented to the fact that there should be the Radnor Township employees' benefits should be closely examined. So that's just a very high-level highlight of what we found just in glancing at when we closed the survey. What we do use the results for, all the survey results will be in the final report. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Philip. And thank you to the people that took the time to fill out the survey. We very much appreciate it. And we really appreciate the written comments as well. Okay, next slide, hon. Interim recommendations. Okay. On May 20th, this group delivered 6 interim recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. These were recommendations for 2010. We have not made recommendations yet beyond 2010 at this point, and we will do so in our final report. We're not making value judgments. I want that to be very clear to everyone. The interim recommendations are evidence and fact-based recommendations regarding the financial impact to the budget, which is our charge and is available to review in the resolution in the back of the room. So let's talk about those. Okay. So the first of the 6 interim recommendations was effective immediately, retain all township real estate transfer tax receipts in the general fund, discontinue the practice of transferring 25% of these receipts to the open space fund. As I mentioned earlier, when a property changes hands in Radnor Township, there's a 2.5% tax. The 1% of that comes to Radnor Township is then further divided. 75% of that 1% stays in the general fund, and 25% of that goes to the open space fund. Based on the significant and serious problem we have in the general fund, meeting our obligations, it is our recommendation that we currently discontinue the practice. Certainly can be revisited, and all of these are at the discretion of the commissioners, but we felt that it would be a prudent financial decision right now to keep all of the money in the general fund. So that's the first recommendation. That would be about $600,000 is what's in the budget as the transfer tax that goes into the open space fund that would be held in the general fund. The second came up after we had our meeting with the bond council. Evaluate refinancing the 2002 bond obligation. There's estimated savings for doing that of $640,000. Total actual savings would be subject to market conditions, fluctuations, when they do it, or if they decide not to do it. We're just saying that we support the idea of saving money when you can. It's essentially like refinancing your mortgage on your house to get a better rate. In the 2010 budget, in the general fund, there was a line item to do a salary survey project, and while we think that having good salary information, comparable salary information is valuable, we do not believe that spending $100,000 on that project is financially prudent, and especially at this time. We think that can be done through other ways. The third or fourth of the 6, execute a revised professional services agreement with the solicitor. This is to address our legal fees for Radnor Township. Legal services are a significant expense for the township currently, and what we are recommending is that the township solicitor be put on a retainer, which is a typical approach for solicitors, both at school districts and townships. So we are recommending that the Board of Commissioners and staff take a look at a retainer. That helps the legal expenses be predictable. It's good policy. So, okay, and then the last 2 of our 6, they are separate recommendations, but they are also very related. The first one is to implement an immediate moratorium on further township indebtedness. As you saw on the earlier slide, we owe $90 million in debt service, principal and interest payments between now and 2037. We've been advised by bond counsel that is approximately 3 times the per capita debt of surrounding municipalities. We do not believe that at this time taking on any more debt is a prudent decision. So that's the fifth, and the last one was for Radnor Township to implement an immediate moratorium on acquisition of open space. That is, as I said, tied to the debt issue, so that's the part where it's tied. But where those two things are separate recommendations is that when we started to try to get our hands around the current parcels of land that Radnor Township owns, which is approximately 50, what we have found is that the appropriate amount of information is not currently all in one place. We believe that a good policy and procedure would be for the township to take a look at the 50 parcels we currently own. We need a valuation study. We don't know what the current value is of the 50 parcels that we own. When we move forward and we want to acquire additional open space, there needs to be a step-by-step approach where we understand what taxable revenue are we giving up by putting a parcel into open space, what is the ongoing expense of maintaining that piece of property, are there any environmental concerns, is there clear title? There's a whole host of things that should be done. And what we're recommending is until the township can really get their hands around what we currently have and what is the value of what we have, we should wait on doing anything further. And that's why that recommendation is in the interim recommendations. But again, these are for 2010. The Board of Commissioners, our resolution and our charge is actually to look at 2011, but the commissioners asked us to please take a look at 2010 and make some interim recommendations, and that's why we had an obligation to put forth some ideas at this time. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. So that actually ends our formal presentation already, and we would love to have public comment, and I encourage anyone to come up and feel free to give us any ideas. We may not have answers to your questions. If you have a question for us and we don't have an answer, I'd be more than happy to take it down and get back to you at a further date, but we're still getting our hands around everything too. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Leslie Bowes. I'm the Executive Director of the Radnor Conservancy, and I want to start by thanking each and every one of you for your time, your volunteer effort. Clearly, a lot of brain power and experience up on this board, and residents need to be appreciative of the fact that you guys are willing to put your expertise and your experience towards this issue. It's important to everybody. And, it's a tough job. Really appreciate that. It is a really tough job, and you are certainly not going to please everybody in the township. We already know that. It's not possible. You're not going to please every Board of Commissioners, every member of the Board of Commissioners. So thank you for taking this on. I also want to recognize the Board of Commissioners for having the forethought to get you guys together, because I think this township is a wealth of experience and knowledge and education, and it's great that they thought about taking advantage of you guys being willing to share it with us. Now, I know you're sifting through a lot of data. There are multiple options. There are a lot of different ways of looking at things. There are probably several right answers, wrong answers. I'm just here really to talk about one specific thing, and that is the open space moratorium. Because this is so complex, there are obviously no easy answers. I don't want anybody to get the notion that open space is an easy answer either. I appreciate every word that you said about needing to know how to finance passive open space. It is an expense. Conservancy is working on that in several different ways of figuring out plans for acquisition of open space in the future. I think you're exactly right. An analysis of the value of the open space that we have is a great idea. We can't afford probably to do it right now, unfortunately, but there are, over the past century or century and a half, there have been, little pieces of property that we've picked up hither and yon. Some of them may be better choices than others, but there was a point when everybody thought, the Willows was a really bad idea, and now it's a jewel in the township. So I guess what I wanted to say to start out with is that this, I want to approach this as an economic downturn. This is not we haven't crash landed any place. I grant you that the economic forecasts are that this is going to be a downturn that lasts longer rather than shorter. But I want this township to come out on the other side, and I know you do, at least as well off as we are now. In other words, I don't want us to make any permanent changes to the township that we're not going to be able to resume, pull back in, take advantage of when we do come out the other side and have higher revenues. So the unique thing about open space is that when it's gone, it's gone. Once the property is developed, there's no going back. So passing up an opportunity to purchase open space is a permanent solution. We're not talking decades, we're talking centuries. The property is there or it's gone. And there are several important properties that are currently on the market or are likely to be on the market and in play within the next decade. Landowners get to do whatever they want to with their land, but when it comes on the market, you have to be poised to take advantage of that opportunity. And obviously, a moratorium would tie the hands, missing the opportunity, and be a permanent solution to what is right now really a temporary problem. I want to say too that open space is not a luxury. It's not a would like to have. It is an essential part of Radnor's character, and it is an essential part of what preserves our land values, our property values. Study after study has shown this to be true. If you live next to a open lot, an empty lot, if your neighbor has a double lot and you live next to that empty lot, that enhances your home value. And if they sell that lot and somebody builds a big house on it, that diminishes your home value. And that's true. And that's true, that's the micro picture. But it's true in the macro sense as well. If you look at the entire township, the pieces of open space that we have make people drive into our township and say, wow, this is a great place. Isn't this so beautiful? I want to live here. And that's why our homes in Radnor Township command a premium. Frankly, it's more expensive to buy a house in Radnor than it is to buy a house in, other local nearby areas, same house, but it's because people perceive Radnor to be so beautiful, and it is, studies show that we have to attribute at least some of this to the beautiful open space that we have. We've now been able to, take advantage of this open space for the last century, because private owners have maintained it, but, that could be coming to an end, and we have to have a plan. Also, an open space moratorium doesn't really cut any money out of the budget. There's no line item for buy open space. And I know you know this, I'm not trying to be smart or funny, but there's not a program where the township, regularly tries to spend $20,000 or $200,000 a year on open space. And frankly, in this economic times, I'd be very surprised if there's much of an appetite amongst the Board of Commissioners for preserving anything but the most premier pieces of property. But I'd hate to have their hands tied. And furthermore, in 2006, which is only a few years ago, there was a referendum about authorizing the Board of Commissioners to access up to $20 million in debt if and when the right property comes up. It's 78% of the voters who voted on that issue said yes. If the right property comes up, then I'm good with that. And so tying their hands now at this point, it goes directly contrary. If we're talking about what the voters want, in the broad sense, 78% voted to allow the commissioners to make that determination as these beautiful properties come up. The 25% real estate, the 25% of the 1% of the real estate transfer tax that goes into the open space fund, $600,000 is not nothing. I agree with you. But that money's not going in there and just sitting there. That money is being used to service debt. It's not, to some degree, it's being used for some other maintenance park issues. And so we're really would just be shuffling. The debt would still have to be paid. The money that's going out of the open space fund is not being spent on open space at the moment. It's being spent on things that we're going to have to pay for anyway. So making this switch isn't going to impact the budget or have any savings at all. I personally think that this 25% real estate transfer tax is one of the most forward-thinking things that the Board of Commissioners has done over the years, as opposed to the unfunded paid leaves that we now are struggling with. They have actually set aside a little kitty, a little quarter in there, every year to try and fund this extra. So I really do appreciate the difficulty of the job that you're here to do. I know it's not really helpful for me to come up here and just make my comments and not offer any solutions. If I could offer the solutions, I bet I'd be making a lot more money than I'm making. I don't pretend that it's easy. I think the town, everybody in the township needs to work in partnership. But I just really wanted to make the point that that open space and cutting open space and moratoriums on open space, it's not really as simple an answer as it would first appear. It's not a luxury, it's not a non-essential, and it has permanent effects that last for centuries. So thank you for your time.
Leslie, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm John Fisher, President of the Conservancy, and I agree with everything Leslie said. I just want to add one thought. We are not unmindful of the financial problems the township faces, and we are not suggesting that the township acquire every piece of open space that's available. Obviously, the Conservancy is interested in preserving open space. But there are ways to preserve open space that don't require us to acquire fee title. And I would like you to include in your recommendations that we work together to find cheaper ways to preserve open space. An obvious example, conservation easements, which we are in the business of providing to interested landowners. These are relatively cheap. They don't cost very much except to the landowner that's getting the tax benefit of it. So this is a perfect example of the way the township and the Conservancy can work together in a fairly cheap solution to preserving open space. Another example would be imposing deed restrictions on property where the homeowner or the property owner is willing to impose such restrictions. Again, very little cost involved in that. A third possibility would be acquiring the development rights to a parcel without necessarily acquiring fee title. So in other words, the landowner could continue to own the property, but he would sell to the township or to the Conservancy the development rights so the property can't be developed. One thing that sometimes we overlook is acquiring open space in some situations can actually save us money because we are extinguishing the development rights. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you develop a property with 1 acre single-family houses and you have 2 or 3 school-age kids in each house, you have a greater tax burden overall than you would if you frankly just acquired title of the property and extinguished all the development rights. So we are very interested in looking at ways where we can extinguish the development rights without necessarily going to the expense of acquiring fee title. So I'd like to include, if you would, in your recommendations, working together and coming up with solutions that are much cheaper but will still preserve open space in the township. Because as Leslie pointed out, preserving open space is something that taxpayers of Radnor Township consider to be very important. The last scientific survey that was done about 10 years ago by the Park and Rec Department, and when people were asked, what are your recommendations as to what we need to achieve, the first 2 by far were preserving open space, one for passive and one for active recreation, but it's something that the taxpayers feel very strongly about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Hi,
Steve.
good evening, everybody. My name's Steve Palantonio, and I am President of the Board of Trustees of the Radnor Memorial Library. I also would like to thank you very, very much for all your time that you're devoting to the township. Many, many hours, I'm sure, I've already put into this already, and I'm sure many, many more, and it's very much appreciated, especially by myself. So again, thank you for your time. I just wanted to say that I know in a lot of financial analysis, there's a P&L and a G&L and all kinds of things that are just line items, but look beyond that a little bit if you can while you're doing your evaluation, excuse me, in that some of the collateral damage, and I use that word very loosely, I don't mean collateral damage, but some of the byproducts of some of the decisions you're going to make with that. I'll use the library as an example. The center of Wayne is a very vibrant place right now, and it's due to a lot of little things that are all together that help bring that different sets of people and groups that come to the township at different times that help support each other. The library, the senior center, the restaurants, the churches, and the middle school, all packed together. They all bring different people in, which help keep the town vibrant. As an example, Citizens Bank Park, when there's a baseball game, is very vibrant, but if nobody's there, it's dead. So I'm not saying if you make a decision, the library's going to go or whatever, but if your decision starts to cut back on services, hours of operation, days of operations, or so forth, little by little, that might have an effect. Might be a small effect. I'm not saying it's going to be catastrophic, but just look a little beyond maybe just the line items and see what might happen with that. But again, I thank you for your time, and I just wanted to maybe have you look at it in a little bit different way as you come across. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Mulroy, and I'm the Executive Director at the library. And I just have a question actually about part of your handout. The General Fund Revenue and Expenditures page, the right-hand side where you're showing expenditures, you made the comment that the expenditures, the top 6 are the first 6 bullets, but it looks to me like the transfers to, I can't read it because I have one, to debt service is not in that list. The bullets underneath.
Right, we're drawing out the, I'm sorry, the top 6 major program areas. We don't consider debt service a programmatic area.
Okay, well then I would point out that, again, from the library's perspective, we're at the bottom of that 6, not the second to the bottom in that list. 3.1% is lower than where the order it's in right now. So I think that's a little misleading to have us as the 6th item on the list at only 3.1%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, Chip Layfield, Wayne. I'm not a member of the Conservancy. I want to thank the group for your hard work, and I was just wondering operationally, how did you come to your conclusions? Did you take a vote, or?
The 6 recommendations, we had others, these are the 6 that we unanimously supported. So all 9 members unanimously supported the 6 recommendations.
Well, I want to thank you because you're taking on some sacred cows here, and we really need that. I don't think there's been a commissioner in my lifetime that hasn't, when they ran as a candidate, claimed to be fiscally responsible. I think what your group's done here with these recommendations is you've set the bar, so now citizens can hold the candidates, hold the commissioners accountable, if they're going to follow these recommendations or not, or what they come up with. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Chip. Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Michelson. In Radnor, I am a member of the school board. I'm very interested in the work that you've done here, and like the others, I thank each and every one of you for the long hours spent doing this analysis. I would like to affirm my my judgment that your decisions are absolutely the right ones. I am very concerned about $90 million in debt service over the upcoming 27 years. I hope I'll be living here for at least most of that time, and I think that that is an absolutely astronomical number to consider having to tax and service appropriately. I have some questions about what you guys have considered with respect to human resources, personnel, the personnel component of Radnor Township's budget. I would be very interested in knowing how we stack up with respect to staffing in all the areas that the township is responsible for. Clearly, as goes staffing, so go employee benefits, and as is the case with the school district, that is often one of the largest numbers out there. So I would encourage you really to take a very hard look at that. I believe that the moratorium on open space acquisition at this time is the right answer. I don't think that it is a good idea for us to be adding any more to the township's budget, which of course we would be doing to the extent that we have to add debt. I think some of Mr. Fisher's ideas I think are worth pursuing, and I would encourage you to do that. I think open space isn't necessarily a bad idea, but I think given where we are as a priority, I just don't think we can go there in the way that might have been contemplated in '06. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Susan. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Jim Riley, Rosemont. Excuse me. And thank you all for doing what you guys did. And this is a nice handout, and it's easy to understand. And I know you guys had mentioned it. You're going to kind of evaluate open space spending in Radnor and look into it. And I did back at that last bond issue about the first bond issue and what they purchased. And the township had a form at the library that went through it. I'm pretty sure it was 13 properties. Of those 13 properties, just to compare the most expensive 5 with the least expensive 5, Radnor spent $95,000 per acre on 5 parcels, totaling 42 acres for $4 million total. The average size was 8.39 acres. Radnor spent on the expensive ones. Radnor spent $808,000 per acre on 5 parcels. That's like per acre. You might only got like a quarter lot, but bringing it up to an acre. $880,000 per acre on 5 parcels, totaling 2.5 acres for a total of $2 million. So they spent $2 million on just 2.5 acres. The average size was half an acre. 4 out of 5 of them had an existing home on them. They weren't really open space. So the cost included demolition to make it open space. So my conclusion kind of from this, and this is back in 2006, use of open space funds to purchase open space. Use it to purchase open space. Do not try to create open space. But the size of the property should not be the main factor also. This cost per acre and other factors go into it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jim. We're doing that ourselves right now, like taking a look at the 50 parcels, looking at what we spend per acre, trying to assess whether we've overpaid for some of this open space. And that's why, that's part of the reason we say we need a moratorium until we get our hands around the current situation.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I just had the 13 because they gave us the 13
Thank you.
from the last bond issue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Sheehan. I live in Wayne. I've lived here for 39 years. I was a young guy when I moved here. First 15 or 20 years, I delegated civic responsibility to all my older neighbors. And now I am an older neighbor. So I appreciate all that you've done, especially you're using the word neighbors. The work that you're doing is you're doing it as our neighbors and as our friends. And I, for one, deeply appreciate what you're doing. to me, what it does is it gives the Board of Commissioners a little bit of distance from it, get a group of people, fresh views, different backgrounds, to look at the same objective data from a different point of view. I support all of the recommendations that all of your interim recommendations seem to me very reasonable. When I look at the schedule showing the revenues and expenses, and if I just look at it over the 3-year trend period, what it basically shows to me is that there's an excess of spending over revenues that averages about 8% over the 3-year period. And during that same 3-year period, to meet that deficit, basically the township is chewing down its fund balance at the rate of roughly $2.5 million a year. And it's almost doing it equally over those 3 years. And there's only going to be 1 year left at that rate of reducing the fund balance before it goes to zero. So just an observation, if a family or a business was looking at this chart, they would say to themselves, we're in trouble because we can't survive very much longer at the rate at which we are chewing up our savings. And so to me, the urgency of working on this is something that's really important. As a family or a business, I would suggest that the township, would probably want to work at it on a more urgent basis than it has up until now. And I think the kind of suggestions that you're looking at, alternatives, are very much in order. One question that I have is, in looking at the debt of the township, $56 million, I divide that by roughly 36,000 township residents, including children. No? Too many residents?
Yeah, 31,000, I believe, is the
Okay.
number that's used, but we're also actually trying to get our hands around that.
Okay.
The 31,000 includes college students.
Okay.
Villanova,
So,
Eastern,
big picture.
Cabrini.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just big picture, $60 million of debt, 30,000 residents, it's roughly $2,000 of debt per resident, including all the babies that are being born today at the hospitals around. It's a lot of debt per resident. And the question I have is, does that include, or how much additional would the unfunded liabilities of the township add to that debt? And other liabilities, to the extent there are significant other liabilities.
that's an excellent question, and that is something that we are working on.
Okay.
I don't have an answer at this
Okay.
point, but your point is well taken.
Good. All right. Yeah, to me, that's big, because I would add that to the debt, and I would say, do the residents of Radnor Township really want to have borrowed into the future so much of not only people like you and me, but our children and grandchildren? So it's a lot of debt. So, and I know one of the items on the chart was the benefits of the township and the salary survey. To me, when that becomes an important thing to do, thing I would do is I would look at what the other surrounding townships are doing benefit-wise and salary, because they're both components of compensation. So, but I fully support what you're all doing, neighbors, and I urge you to continue what you're doing. I think you're doing great stuff. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
May I make a comment, sir? Just, sir, if you hadn't had a chance to see this letter that we prepared that accompanied the citizen survey, it has a number of those facts that you're interested in, for this year at least, explained there. I mentioned the unfunded liability, for example, of the employee pensions and so on. That's some of those facts are there. So we may have a copy we can give you, but we can certainly get you one.
Craig, you're referring to your letter that went with you can have my copy. Good evening, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Pilling, and I live in Garrett Hill. And for 3.5 years, not quite 3 years, excuse me, we fought like hell to keep Emlyn to Nellfield, which the township doesn't own, but the school district does. And we did everything we possibly could to get it into open space. But we didn't succeed. It's still PALU. So for me to stand up here and say, I think there should be a moratorium, I'm not quite sure about the ire of other Garrett Hillians, because it would be really tragic if the school district put that land on the market, and the rumors are swirling that they would. But nevertheless, I don't see any other choice. And I guess I represent the seniors. I may be 73, but I'm still working in order to live here. But if you don't get this under control, you're going to lose a whole segment of the society of this township, because the seniors' income isn't going up to the level of the taxes. And I know it's a very big bite, and it's very, very difficult. But I'd like to stay here the rest of my life. And I don't know that I and many other people who are in my age bracket and my income bracket are going to be able to do that. And I think you lose the richness of a township. It may be a beautiful township, but if you don't have seniors, you've lost a really big piece of it. And I know Garrett Hill would fight tremendously, and maybe they could pull something off if Emlyn to Nellfield comes up. I think it's the most vulnerable piece of land in the township that's ripe for development. But we have to stop this. I'd love to go to Africa. I could go to Africa, but I'd be in debt the rest of my life. And so, as much as I'd like to go, I have to say, well, it's a dream, and I think the township is in that place. Now, I have 2 suggestions that I'd like you to look at. One of which I have brought up. I know it takes money to save money, and that is the program Recycle Bank. I know we're doing more single-stream recycling, and that's an improvement. Cherry Hill, New Jersey went to Recycle Bank, and in one 5-month period, they saved $1.5 million in tipping fees. It works like this. Your recycling is weighed. You, the individual, get credit, and because you're getting points, the amount of recycling improves. And those points actually are a benefit to the community, because you get the Acme and you get Joe's and you get the sports stores to buy into it. And when you accumulate the points, you can then go spend the points, not only in the big stores like Home Depot and Lowe's and Acme, but in the small stores. So you're stimulating business locally. I'd really like the township to look into this. The other thing is, has the township really given thought to leasing out the Willows Mansion to some sort of either a nonprofit, a bed and breakfast, or a restaurant? I know the mansion is not carrying its own weight, and it has a lot of competition. They did that in Fairmount Park. All those park houses are leased out. And the improvements, the maintenance, it's all on whoever it is who leases it. Most of those are nonprofits. But I'd like the township to look into it, because I think it would be a better utilization of a building that takes a lot of money to keep it up. And it's not kept up to the degree that it should be. It really needs a lot of work. So those are 2 right off the top of my head. And thank you for listening. Thank you for the job you're doing, because you've sort of identified the elephants in the living room, and that takes a lot of courage. And I support you in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Can I say one thing? I do appreciate that feedback with an idea for revenue stream, because a lot of the feedback that this committee has been getting is about cutting expenses, or how can we strategically cut certain things to save on costs. But very few ideas that we've been receiving are for revenue. And the Board of Commissioners is looking for revenue as well as cutting expenses. So any thoughts, any inputs to those ideas would be greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, Jim Link from Wayne. A couple of quick just general comments. First of all, I think you guys are doing a great job. It takes a lot of guts, I know, to get up and do this kind of work. It can be a hot spotlight for sure. One of the things that I noted in your presentation, and I think is a really critical point, and it wasn't brought out quite as brightly as I think it maybe should have, and that is fund balance is a really critical measure of fiscal health. And in fact, a negative fund balance in your general fund is likely to lead to downgrade of your credit, at least a negative watch, if not a full-blown downgrade, and that costs you more money. That means that if you're going to issue debt, it costs more to issue the debt. It just generally deteriorates the overall creditworthiness of your township. And so we've got to make sure that we address the fund balance issues one way or another. The other thing is, and I don't have all the gory details, you know, $90 million is a lot of debt, and I get that. But let's not lose sight of the fact that there were a lot of things that got built and done with that $90 million. And so while it certainly is, I'd prefer not to have the $90 million. I also prefer to have, you know, a well-working water and sewer system, and some of the open space is probably absolutely appropriate and things like that. So just, I hate to see it go too far to one side or the other. I think an appropriate amount seems, or appropriate, austerity is not the right word, but just balance is in order. Again, I think you guys have done a really good job, and you know, if I can help in any way, please let me know.
Thanks very much. Thank you for highlighting the fund balance issue as well. I appreciate that. Well, that seems to be all our public comments. I'd like to just make one brief comment, and if anyone else on the committee would like to. I just don't want there to be any confusion that we are philosophically opposed to open space. We all love open space, and we are all residents of Radnor. I'm actually a 25-year resident. I didn't mention that earlier. I've been here a very long time. Our charge, as well as our concern, is how to procure open space. And the interim recommendations are for Radnor Township. They're not for Radnor Conservancy. I do hope that the Radnor Conservancy is moving forward with their mission, doing their fundraising activities, and doing their best to secure open space on behalf of their organization. These recommendations are for Radnor Township. And like I said, we do all love open space, but we are challenged with the current financial picture. So I just wanted to make that a clear point this evening. And if anyone else on the committee would like to...
The only thing I would add to that is that, you know, during the conversations been had by the committee, there's never been a statement of anyone on this board that I know of against open space. You know, it's that simple. I mean, I think that the issue is about finances and how do we afford it.
I would just like to comment about our survey and say it's been wonderful to hear from 10 people tonight and to have many of you listening to the conversation. But although our survey wasn't a scientific representative sample of Radnor Township citizens, 734 people chose to fill it out, and 336, I think it is, wrote extensive comments. So it's another way for us to get information from the public. We've used 2 public hearings. We've used that citizen survey. We have an email address that's still open, and anybody can email us whatever they would like to say about our work. And so I want to say, in reference to the survey, thank you to all those citizens who took that time to fill it out. It is valuable information, and you and the public will see all of it, all the written comments and all the results. So it's going to be something we share with the commissioners and all of you.
And like Craig just said, we do have an email address. Elizabeth, would you mind putting? This is my daughter who's helping us out this evening. citizensfinance@radnor.org. Please feel free to email us at any time. We do have a webpage on the radnor.com website. You can find us. You can find our resolution. You can find the PowerPoint presentation, which has some more information from April. I might have said that already, the resolution. And then this PowerPoint presentation will be available within 48 hours. And thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry.
If I may make a comment?
Absolutely.
Sure. My name is Bob Zinkowski. I'm the Township Manager. This is week 6 that I've begun here. I had the opportunity to spend time with the committee here, and am very impressed with your hard work and effort and the time that you spent to go through this. In my time here, I'll be looking at the operations of the township as well. I can say that, knowing this position coming into it, that there are many challenges that exist here. There are changes that are coming. I mean, it'd be nice to sit here and say that, everything will continue as is, but, that would be a lie, because there are changes and there are tough decisions to be made here. I think we have a very good staff that was able to weather the storm here over the last few years here under very turbulent times here, and I think they worked very well. It's good to hear that the schools are financially sound and that they won't have to make any cuts and do anything to their programs or services. But I do believe, though, that there are a lot of issues to be looked at here, how this situation, how this organization runs, how we operate, how we communicate information up and down throughout the organization. Do we provide the best services that we can within the given budget? How the dollars flow out of the township, which in my short time here is a concern of where dollars go. The services we provide in certain areas that possibly may not be within our jurisdiction or within our realm of what we do. I look forward to working with this committee here very closely. I think your recommendations are very good. I think that also there are, again, difficult decisions that have to be made, the level of service in which the township is accustomed to what level of service that we have to decide to make these decisions. I think your assessment of the debt load here is huge. I think when I look at the infrastructure issues and just looking at some videotape of what currently resides underground and the magnitude of that problem that sits there is very big. So there are a multitude of issues that we are going to be facing. But again, I think the involvement here of this committee and the comments from the residents here this evening are very good because, again, we're all in this together. It's not where it's we against they or us against them. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all neighbors. We all live here and we all care about this. So I think that as we move forward, looking at these recommendations, hearing from residents of the comments, even though sometimes the comments may come out a different way, but I think over the time I've been able to filter through a lot of that and find out deep down the care and concern and compassion of the residents that take that into account of what that is, and to even spend time in these type of settings, in these type of committee meetings where you can spend that time and have that open dialogue and conversation and the reality of where things stand, and to hear that feedback, I think will only make us better moving forward. I think there's tremendous opportunities in these downturn economic times here. It's taking advantage of those and positioning the township to take advantage of those opportunities. So again, I just want to thank you all for your hard work and effort and your commitment to this township, because you have spent a lot of time volunteering away from your family, away from your work to make these recommendations. Thank you for that, and to the residents who have spent their time here tonight to sit here and make those comments. And as always, welcome that type of input. Thank you.
Bob, thanks so much. So that concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you again, and